Welcome to all of you who've decided to join us for our training today. Thank you so much. I'm here with our lovely guest, the one and only Karin Rice-Duncanson, dynamite member of our team. We're going to talk a little bit today about submitting offers, okay? First, before we do that, I want to ask, how many years of experience in real estate do you have? 7 years of experience. And you, 8 years now? Awesome. And you work with all varieties of people, correct? So you're not specifically working with first-time home buyers or move-up buyers, or you haven't limited yourself when it comes to your real estate career. That's great. And how has having that kind of an open mind really helped you develop skills in getting any person who works with you to be able to submit offers and ultimately end up in a home?
Well, you don't limit yourself, right? And I think just having the versatility, being able to work with a multitude of different people, first, whether it's first-time home buyers or move-up buyers or people, transferring in from another state that have a home, it just, you become very versatile and you become very good at reading the situation about what they need pretty quickly in assessing what kind of hat you want to put on that day for a certain client.
There was no pun intended with that.
I think when you learn to read people or read the situation about what their needs are, then if you're versatile, you can hone in on how to be the agent they need for that particular circumstance, right?
That's right. So I think that's very smart advice and a great way to kind of kick this off, because one thing I wanted to do is open up to anyone who's joining us today to kind of talk about what it is they are seeing or experiencing it with their clients right now and submitting offers. Karin and I had a brief chat yesterday about a couple of things that she's been working through with buyers, and she's come off this really big hot streak in the late fall, early winter here of getting people across the board. So I just thought it would be timely for everyone to talk a little bit about what it is that you are seeing right now with the offers you are submitting. Are there hiccups that are happening? Because those are great ways for us to segue into an interview about, or the process that you use in kind of coaching your clients and using that experience of working with every type of buyer to move people forward. So is anyone experiencing anything when it comes to submitting offers that they are struggling with or are seeing as kind of a pattern? If so, you can take yourself off mute.
This is Chris.
Hi, Chris.
I'm seeing a lot of not native Minnesotans and people that have been paying attention to, I hate to say it, the news, that I'm getting into those conversations where I will not pay above list, and we're losing in multiples again already in January.
That's
and
interesting.
I know. And I know the conversation is, well, it takes losing a couple. But how do you deal with those really stubborn buyers that just don't understand what the market is, even when you educate them?
I think that's interesting. I have actually been working with buyers who are kind of in the same boat, and we lost on a couple of them, and they were shocked that all of a sudden this property they were interested in went into multiple offers. That's just the market we're in. One of the things that I do, and you're welcome to chime in on this in any way, is sometimes you have to remind the person you're working with that listing price is not market value. Listing price is the asking price that is the starting point determined by the seller and their listing agent. So if it were the market value, every property would sell for list price, but it doesn't, right? Some sell for less, some sell for more. The seller will determine what their asking price is. The market determines what the value of the property is. So it is the buyer who is actually determining that. What is market price? Market price is the price that a seller will reasonably accept and a buyer will reasonably pay. So it's whatever the combination of those two things are that determine market value of a property. And sometimes you just have to remind our buyers that asking price is just that, asking price. Sometimes those homes don't sell for what they're listed for. Sometimes they sell for significantly more, and ultimately it's the buyer deciding what that price will be. And if there are buyers in the market who are willing to pay more, that tells you what's happening in the market. That tells you the value of the property. Just because you have one or two people who will not pay the asking price or think that it's worth less, it doesn't make them right. And it doesn't make people who are willing to pay more for a property wrong either. That's the market value.
That's really good. I like that. I think
Love that.
I do. I mean, I'm going to use that. And what I've been doing, because I also have a few like this right now.
Yeah, we talked about one of them yesterday. Yeah.
So just bringing them back to their timeline and just asking questions. I feel always, if you can ask the questions to funnel so they can get that light bulb. How long do you want to keep doing this? And do you want to be in a property by X amount of time? And what is it going to look like for you if we continue to offer less and you continue losing out? What is that going to look like for you, for your family? If you don't get into a, like if you can ask them what that looks like for them, and then they can start to see. I feel like anytime that you can bring it back to them so that they can answer themselves what you want them to get to, they will have the light bulb go on for themselves.
I think that's really great advice because then you're personalizing it every time. There's a reason why people don't want to offer full asking price on a property, or if they're stuck in that mentality and they're watching the news, it's so easy to lump themselves in with kind of like the fold, so to speak, right? And you become I don't want to use a bad term, but the sheeple, like you're just kind of, you're following in with the group mentality or the herd mentality of things. And that can be really hard to navigate through. I always try to pull it back kind of along the same lines, what their needs are, but what does that mean for them if they don't find a property in the right amount of time? What does that consequence look like for you? Do you have time to wait? What happens if we continue to make offers that are below what a seller will accept or aren't in line with the buyers in the market? And now we get to the end of your timeline and you're forced to sign another lease, or you can't get your house on the market and in the right amount of time, or you can't get your kids into the school district that you've been hoping that you're going to get them into. And at the same time, if the value of properties go up by that time, the end of the timeline, what happens if you're now priced out of the market? What happens if you're waiting 6 months and kind of not wanting to do what it takes to secure a home, ultimately results in your not being able to afford the type of home you need anymore? Are you willing to accept that consequence that goes along with it? So our job is communicating, is kind of laying it out there, and see, they're going to decide what it is that they want to do, and we have to coach them through all of those consequences, so to speak.
And I think we all have stories like that, right? We all had clients.
Yep.
We all had clients. We have a story. They waited, and then by the end, they were priced out. I had, if you were working with first-time home buyers or anybody who had a certain criteria, I think in the last, especially the last 2 years, I think we all had clients that were like, especially when the interest rates goes, right?
Yep.
People, a big part of the market was priced out of the market. So I think we can all take it back to,
we've seen it the last 2
like
years.
this person.
Exactly. We all have clients. That's a great point. All having clients who waited. I know that in 2017 and 18, I was working with people who were just saying, we're waiting for the market to crash, or we're waiting for prices to come down. And now with where real estate is gone and you add the interest rates into it, they can't even afford a townhouse anymore.
Right.
And they could have been into an asset 4 or 5 years ago that had doubled in value in the meantime, and they missed their opportunity to enter.
And so we can tell stories like that, I think, is super valuable for people to say, I don't want that to happen to you. Because some people will say, oh, we have all the time in the world. But if you can exactly.
But do you have all the money in the world?
Exactly. So
really it comes down to that. You have all the time in the world, but
exactly. So getting them to, I think, see that is super valuable.
Right. I have just a couple quick things that I want to discuss. Part of this is from Parker. So when we see, like, we get to a point where we're submitting offers, what role does digging into the client's why really play in and not only just getting to the point of submitting an offer, but for you, in your experience, making sure that that offer doesn't fall apart.
Right.
So what are you doing, I guess, to kind of communicate with your clients and figure out what their needs are?
So after we had that conversation yesterday, so when I'm the most successful at this, and you know, I think a lot of people know, and I built my career off of Zillow leads,
Mm-hmm.
and most of them are, you know, repeat referral businesses, and so I kind of honed a system, and one of those things, particularly in the last 2 years when I was on my own, and then coming back into the Zillow, setting yourself up in the beginning as the knowledge broker,
Mm-hmm.
and then asking that there's a question that I ask all the time. You know, how far along are you in the process when I see them?
Yep.
And then, you know, a lot of times they're just getting started. They've seen a few properties. Okay, so how familiar are you with the process? And then at that point you can go, when I'm the most successful, I'm going to back up. I always do a buyer's consult, whether it's at the property or it's a separate time. But how I get there is, how familiar are you with the process? Okay. And I usually ask that toward the end, because sometimes you get a client that wants to offer on that property.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're going to have to really educate them either on the spot and go through like a mini buyer's consult,
Right.
because they don't know that they're going to have to pay earnest money up front, that they're going to have to pay inspection, and they're going to have to pay appraisal. Now, those three things I always make sure that they know.
Yep.
And so setting yourself up as the knowledge broker and then asking them certain questions, you know, what's important to you? What are your deal breakers? And then, so I will always sit down with a client and do a buyer's consult, like a full buyer's consult, asking them questions. And if they know, number one, that you're on their side, number one, then
Yep.
they trust you, and it's okay that that property didn't work out. I've heard so many times, I really value the fact that you told me the truth about this property, that you weren't pressuring me to buy this property, and that you took the time to educate,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and so then they're going to come back to you versus going to another Zillow agent, you know,
Right.
putting in a new email address or whatever, you know, because I think a lot of times they view us as, to be honest with you, I think they view Zillow agents as like a door opener.
That's exactly it.
And if you had that off right in the beginning, how far along are you in the process? How familiar are you with this process? My job is to educate my clients because I want to make sure you're set up for success. That's what my job is.
Mm-hmm.
And I really care that you are successful in this process. If this isn't the house, it's totally fine. We'll find the next one.
Right.
Or we'll find the one that works for you, but I want to make sure that you're set up for success. So, you know, do you have time to, you know, talk about what your needs and, you know, wants are? And then find out what their deal breakers are right away. If they need a 3-car garage for their, you know, whatever, you know, you're going to really hone in on what they want. That's one way I do it. And they're going to come back to you.
So what I'm hearing is 3 things I picked up out of that, which I absolutely love. We work very similarly.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I love what you do in real estate. Is number 1, you are helping people make an informed decision. Okay. Number 2, you're focusing on the relationship with the buyer, not the sale. And number 3, you are conveying trust, and that you are really truly representing the best interest of the buyer, even if it means telling them that that's not the right house for them.
Right.
You're doing a great job with that.
Well, I mean, your job, I mean, I tell this to my clients, this is a career, and my job is, you know, to make sure that you're satisfied and you're happy. And I build my career on repeat referral business. If I don't do a good job for you, if you don't feel like, you know, I'm doing a good job for you, I'm not going to build a career.
Right.
So then they know, if they know that there's no pressure on them, number one,
Mm-hmm.
then they're going to come back to you. And then so this is really bad, but I don't feel bad for saying this. I don't show houses for fun. I
Right.
like showing houses, but I show houses to sell houses,
Right.
and to make money. Okay. You know, like, and so,
Your time is valuable.
right. And
Yep.
so I hone in on what my why is in the beginning. My why is to find them a house in the least amount of time possible.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you can find through, you know, and say they want 3 bedrooms on one level. Okay. What does that look like for you? Where are you right now? Tell me where you are right now. What is 3 bedrooms on one level going to do for you? What is a fenced in yard going to, you know, look like for you? to find out what their needs and wants are, what their deal breakers are, what they're willing to negotiate on.
Mhm.
You have to coach them through that sometimes, Um, and if you can say, so tell me about your situation now. Are you in a rental? Do you have a lease? Are you willing to break it? And oh, well, we're not, till August. Okay, so if you find the right property, because I definitely recommend, continuing to look,
Yep.
even if you're not ready, but if you find the right property that checks 9 out of 10 or 7 out of 10 of these, how comfortable are you moving on something?
Yep.
Because sometimes sometimes these opportunities don't come around. So if you find the right one, I usually say, if we find the right one, are you ready to move?
And I think
So-
so let's tap into that a little bit, because I think that's really important. So you are helping them make an informed decision. You are focusing on the relationship, not on the sale. You are building trust by representing their best interests, even if they're not committed to working with you yet. And then from there, you're able to get them to open up and really dive deep on what it is they need in a house and why they need it.
Mhm.
And then from there, it's kind of painting a picture for you, because you are focused on selling them a house.
Mhm.
You're not just, you're doing a really good job, I think, of matching their why with what your why is.
Oh yeah,
Right?
I'm selling them a house.
Yeah, right. That's our end goal, right? We're not just opening doors. We have to remember that. And I think that was a dynamite tip for everybody. You have to remember that your goal is to sell them a house. Your goal is to get them into the home that they need. And it's okay to have your goal and their goal meet each other.
I mean, right, they're together.
Right. So now that you have this relationship developed, they trust you. They're telling you everything that they're looking for in a property. How are you using that information to proactively bring them into houses? Do you wait for them to come to you, or are you the person who's always looking for them?
I'm always looking. So I have and I think a lot of us do the same thing. I've got all their searches set to me, that they go to me.
Okay.
And so some are on a daily, most of them are ASAP. And literally every time I get dinged for a client, I look and see what came up. And I know what their why is, and I know what they're looking for. This property, let's go. And I send it to them. Sometimes I say, if I'm in the car, sometimes I'll screenshot it, or, sometimes I'll pull up, I've got the MLS Touch app, and sometimes I'll send them that. But a lot of things, we should definitely go check out this property. It seems to check a lot of your boxes. What do you think? And I, get them excited. If people aren't sending you things, by the way, to look at, it's time for you to because then they're either off with somebody else, or they're not looking. And so
Dynamite tip right there. Golden tip, right? If they are not sending you things to look at, or they're not engaging with what you've sent them, they're working with somebody else. So what are you proactively doing to keep that person engaged in the home buying process? What do you do on a daily basis or a weekly basis? So I heard you say, like, you have the searches sent to you and you're tapping into what you see them doing. What do you then do? Do you reach out an email? Do you call and suggest a showing? Do you text? Okay, so you're texting.
Most of my stuff is via text, and I text them a property. We should definitely go check this out.
Yep.
I'm super excited for
Yeah.
I'm super excited for this one. And then if they respond, which most of the time they do, okay, this is what I've seen. Have you seen any others that you'd like to, add to this? I've got time, and if you've got time, let's go see if it's just the one, it's just the one. But if you really want to set the stage early on, that's why I do a buyer's consult. Number one, because it sets you up for not being just a door opener, right?
Right.
But two, then you get to all their needs and what they're looking for. And if you find a property, then they're like, oh yeah, I'm not going to wait. I shouldn't wait on this one.
So you've set the tone up front for the fact you want the buyer to consider, when that right house comes along, are you ready to make a move? Yeah.
That was already set.
Yep, from the buyer consultation.
Mhm.
So it shows kind of like the critical step and now we're connecting the last few trainings that we've done on this, right? Is how important it is from that upfront first meeting with the client. Then we go into the showing homes phase. And now to get them to submit offers, like the tone for that was really set from that first meeting. It shows the importance of the buyer consultation and shows the importance of digging deep into the client's why. We're not just pushing him into houses. Our goal is to sell the home, but we want to make sure we're selling them the right home. right?
Mhm.
And we're going to talk a little bit about that towards the end, I think, about what happens when you're doing it the opposite and you end up in a situation where deals are canceled. But let's talk a little bit about when you're actually in a house, you've been showing clients with people, what signals are you getting that this might be the right one? And then how do you tap into that to encourage clients to move forward with an offer on that property?
So, they'll say things like, oh, I can see, my furniture fitting here, or, this would be Jimmy's room, or this would be Ava's room. So, they start to like really
Envision themselves in the home.
and then they start saying things. I mean, you can read cues and you can hear what they say. And then at the end, I always say, okay, so what do you guys think of this house? How does this, what do you guys think of this house? I think I think it's gonna, work. I'm really, really interested in, and if, they're ready to go. Then I say, I've seen this happen so many times. I don't know what it is. And this is actually true. And I think everybody can attest to this, but this is 100% true. I don't know what it is, but when one person is interested in a property, the universe just feels that. And they're like, and then remarkably, somebody else is too. It could be sitting for 30, 40, 50 days. I don't care what. You got a client that's interested in that property, the universe is like energetically, somebody else magically. So it's always to your benefit to be the first one. Do not wait, because you don't want to be in a multiple offer situation. So if this is the house, you want, it checks your boxes, you can envision yourself here, it's going to set up your lifestyle, then you take them back to their why. Let's, I would strongly consider acting on this property before it's too late.
So do you ever ask questions? Do you ever like flat out ask someone, can you picture yourself living in this house? And do you walk through the property and point out the features in that home that they told you were must-haves? How do you guide them through that part so that as you're showing the property, they're able to say, oh yeah, this was one of the things on my list that I needed. Oh, it does have this. Are you keeping that kind of in front of them the whole time?
I do a lot. And one of the things, to be honest with you, that I also do, I also make sure to point out flaws.
That's great.
Because that also builds trust.
Yes, it does.
And so if you, can start to point out flaws, okay, well, definitely ask this in an inspection, or definitely, this is something to keep in mind, but it has this, it has, so you're going to kind of marry the flaws with with their must have.
Keeping them excited and looking out for their best interests at the same time.
Again, because that's just building trust, right? And it's also, then it's like, if they have that inspection and it gets pointed out, then they know that you already said it.
Yep.
It's like, oh, Karen, I didn't say anything.
What else was she hiding about this property? Right.
No, enough now. If you've sold any houses and you've been along to inspections, what they're going to point out.
Right.
But anyway, so I get excited for people. And so that I show that, but also, if we're at the point where, it's got fenced in backyard and that's what their needs are, you can imagine, like, you could have a swing set back here, your kids could be playing.
You can picture the lifestyle.
Yeah. And if there's, a nice patio, can you imagine sitting out here in the summer? I said, I'm like, oh man, I want this house. I want to buy this.
To create some desire for it right there.
Just kind of painting that picture of what it's going to look like for them.
Okay, perfect. So let me ask this. Okay, so now we've got this house that they're excited about. It fits into all their why, or checks so many of their boxes. And they say they want to move forward. What are the next steps for you and how you structure an offer? Like, how are you coaching them to move forward and what kind of offer they should be writing on the property?
Really good question. And this is also something that I talk about in my buyer's consult.
Okay.
How to write a competitive offer, or how to write a compelling offer. That is covered in my buyer's consult. So I take them back. Okay, so remember, we're going to write, we've got earnest money, where we've got terms to talk about. So let's talk about those. And I always say in my buyer's consult, anywhere from 1% to 2%, 2% earnest money if you're going to be competitive, sometimes more, but 1% is the standard.
Yep.
So they know that if they want to be, more competitive, they're going to have a shorter inspection contingency. And we've already talked about what a non-contingent on inspection offer looks like. Okay. And then no, we're not really talking about those much anymore. I have talked about those a lot in the past. So I'm just taking them back to the buyer's consult about now we're going to structure the offer to be as compelling and, appealing to the seller as possible based on the terms. Okay, so the seller would prefer a quick closing date. We already know that the lender can facilitate that. So are you comfortable with, a
Being
30-day?
competitive when it comes
I
to
just take
closing.
them back to what we've already talked about, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And structuring their offer to be very clean. I think we've all been trained to write a very clean offer.
Yep.
And so just making that as clean as possible. And talking about the terms.
I love that.
Yeah.
So theme for this, which I want to take away, and I know that since we're recording this video, it's going to be available for all the agents to watch, is the stage that she sets up front is critical to the success of the client overall. I do the exact same thing. I'm passionate about buyer consultation and helping agents or helping clients make informed decisions so that when the time comes and you've identified the right property, you don't have to say, okay, well, what's earnest money? Okay, well, how long is an inspection contingency? What does it mean to be contingent to the sale of a property? What is an appraisal gap? Like all of those things, they already know that some of these terms are what it's taking to get an offer accepted. So when they have made the decision that it's the property, you've already set the tone for all of those terms already. They feel informed, they're prepared for it. It's going to limit the questions. They've already trusted you. So at that point, it's really just about writing up the offer and submitting it.
And I'm actually under contract with a buyer right now who would not sit down with me and do a buyer's consult. So I had to sprinkle in this information as we went along.
Yep.
And this is just a person who's had their parents heavily involved, and their parents have never bought a house. They've only built. So this has been a fun process. But then if you have a client that's very resistant to actually sitting down with you or doing a Zoom with you, making sure you get this information in throughout your showings. If it's one showing, they're writing an offer, you're going to have to tell them. But if it's like over, the course of a few offers, you have to remind them. You just have to sprinkle that information. What 3 things you pay up front, so they know they're not surprised. These things are coming out of pocket before closing. Just make sure that they know that. Because they're going to be like, oh, I didn't know I needed almost, $5,000 before we get to the closing table. Depending on how much earnest money, right? I didn't know that earnest money counts toward your down payment. So these things are, like, what is an inspection contingency and what does that mean? If you can get this information out before they write an offer, then it saves you a lot of headache. But make sure you get key information
ahead of time.
Can
you imagine going through months of showings with someone and they have no idea that they need to have money for earnest money, money for down payment, money for inspection up front? Like you've just spent months of your time and have not set the tone for what it actually is going to take to move an offer forward.
Yeah.
This is why it's so critical to make sure that the buyers are making an informed decision, because not only is that protecting your time, it protects their time and what's in their best interest, but it's protecting your time as well. And you're less likely to have an offer fall apart because number one, you're not pushing someone into a house. You're truly looking out for the best interest. And number 2, you've been guiding them through the whole process to make an informed decision. So when they reach that point of submitting an offer, it's because they know that that's the right house for them. They're not going to just have cold feet then and back out.
Exactly. I mean, you've set the stage from the beginning, right? And I think the more educated somebody is, and this is so true, the more educated somebody is, the more confident they are going through the process. Yep, it's always true, and it will always be true. And that is your job. It's our job to educate them. That's why we do what we do. That's why we have the reputation we do. That, like we are excellent agents. And so you have to convey that. Right. And if they're not willing to sit down with you, you're still going to convey it.
Exactly.
At a house, at a property, whatever, just to make sure that they have that information so they're not surprised.
I've had some clients do that where it's the same thing. They just refuse to do a sit down. So I always come prepared with a buyer packet just so that from the beginning, like I have information to put in their hands. But I will do showings where I'm saying, oh, I know that this house is, if they accept an inspection contingency on this, it'll be a short one. This house will sell quickly. Little things like that. Or, oh, I wouldn't be surprised if this house sells over asking price. They'll probably get, at least $5,000 in earnest money or something like that, where that opens up conversation opportunity for the leader, the client to start asking you questions. Well, what is earnest money again? Oh, that's the money you have to come up with up front. And anytime I'm planting those seeds, because I haven't had a sit down with them yet, then I'm going back and I'm saying, this is why I wanted to have a sit down with you to make sure you knew what all of those things were that go into making an offer. So it's always circling back to the point, like I've been trying to set you up for success from the beginning, because I don't want you to get cold feet once you do decide to move forward with the home, or worse, like I don't want you to not have the knowledge and cash on hand, truthfully, that you need just to get to a point of making an offer. What happens if I get you excited about a house, we find the perfect one, and you don't have any of the things that you need to move forward? I have set you up for failure, and I do not do that to my clients. So anytime that I'm talking about buyer consultation or upfront, just knowing what they know about the process, those are things that I will say to them, like, if you're not going to work with me, you're going to work with someone else. And I want to make sure that I'm setting you up for success, because if you're not buying with me, what happens if you want to buy a house that I'm listing? Right. And I know the person on the other side. I want to make sure you're making an informed decision. So setting the tone from the beginning is really important. And a couple of things from Parker. So I want to transition a little bit into, we can kind of end it based on timing today, of how to prevent deals from falling apart. So we've done all this work to get to a point of submitting offers, okay? And we've coached our clients from the beginning, set the tone, built the relationship, not focusing on the sale. What role do you think, or have you experienced as an agent who is hungry and wants to get out there and sell homes? If you're too pushy about the wrong house and just focusing on the sale, what impact can that have on cancellation?
Oh, if you haven't set that tone, if you are just focused on the sale and push people into the wrong house, it will probably fall apart during an inspection.
Yep. They will look for a reason to back out of the deal. If there's any doubt in there, and in my experience in real estate, we've been in about the same length of time. I've never had where I felt like they went into the offer with uncertainty. I don't think I've ever had a single deal that actually moved forward. So that's why education upfront is so critical, and making sure we are focused on the person, not on the sale. Yes, we are salespeople, but we are also service people. And I think it's important that we remember both of those things.
Yeah, that's how you build career.
And then how about not digging into their why enough? If we just keep it really superficial, oh, you need 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms, great. We can show them all sorts of 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom homes.
Right.
But how much more so will a person move forward and stick with the offer they've submitted if you know exactly why they need 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms? Right. Like the why goes deeper than just what's on the surface.
Yeah. You're painting the picture of what that looks like for their family.
Yep.
What that provides for them. And also, you can also take them back to where they are now. So you're pretty crammed where you are, right now. But imagine this space. What is that going to look like, for Jimmy and Ava? Yep. For them, if they have their separate bedrooms, or even, their own bathroom. Like this property has an ensuite, primary bedroom. Yep. Do you imagine that sharing your bathroom with kids?
I love that.
What a beautiful thing that is.
Yeah.
That's just truth. Just painting the picture and really driving that home in a non-pushy way, so that you're like on their side. Right?
Yep. One thing I do is I ask all of my clients, what is your 5-year family plan or 10-year plan?
I like that.
So like, where do you see yourself, and how does this home fit into what that goal is?
I love that.
Are you a young couple that is planning on having children? Are you a couple who is downsizing, or maybe just a person, doesn't have to be a couple, someone who's downsizing, who knows, you know what, I just want to finish out the next 5 years of my career and then I'm going to retire. Does that completely change the type of property that would be a good fit for them? If you know what their long-term plan is, I always break it down to 5 years and 10 years. First-time home buyers, statistically, more often than not, will sell at about 5 years. I think that number's gone up slightly to like 7 years now, or 8 years. but it still fits within that 5-year and 10-year plan. Do you see yourself having children in 5 years? Are you going to be someone who is moving from an apartment into a home where you absolutely need outdoor space? Then maybe a townhouse is not the right next move for you unless you plan on moving again in 2 years. And if you do, what does that move look like? So the more that I dig into their why and their timeline, what their future plans are for themselves, the easier it is to make recommendation and really help them make an informed decision on the type of home that's going to meet all of those needs during that time frame. I'm someone who moved into a 3-bedroom house, 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house. It was a disaster. This is my first home. Did not plan on having any more children. Y'all know I've doubled my kid count since then, okay? And we outgrew our space within 2 years in that house. And we were not planning on moving for I was like, no, I'm going to die in this house. My agent told me at the time, no, statistically, you're going to move in 5 years. I'm like, no, we're not having any more children. Like, this is perfect for us. 2 years, I outgrew my house. 5 years, I sold my house. But she never really asked questions about what our long-term plans were. And had I thought about what if this does change? What if something changes with the job? Or did we have plans for that? Or were we going to add pets? Those things, it may have changed the type of house I ended up in for my first home. And so don't be afraid to really dig deep into their why and figure out what their long-term plans look like and the role that plays in their life now, but as they're moving forward.
Yeah.
That will prevent sales from falling apart. And then uncertainty. When it comes to uncertainty in the market, this kind of circles back to Chris, what you were saying at the beginning.
Yeah.
How do we navigate, or how are you navigating uncertainty to prevent people from canceling their sales?
I'm gonna knock on something wood here. I don't get many cancellations. Like in my career, I just don't. So I'm gonna knock on something or wood. I'm not gonna speak too soon. But overall, the uncertainty in the market, if they're super uncertain and you can't break through it, they're not gonna write an offer. Right. But to prevent cancellations, keeping them excited about their long-term vision, their plan, what they
Eyes on the prize. It's
Yep.
in front of you all the time.
Exactly. Just keeping, if they start saying, well, I don't know. Okay, so are you good staying where you are? Because I've heard several times that you're outgrowing your house. Are you okay if you know that if you cancel this, if you don't find another property, right? So what is it that it has you feeling uncertain? I think back to a time where a client was really mad at me, actually, because it was right at COVID, and she lied to me and said she had COVID. And it was a huge deal. And if I would have asked the right questions, like, what is it that's preventing you from closing on this day? What is it that you're trying to achieve? What it was is she wanted her stepkids there. And that closing date didn't align with having her stepkids there. And I didn't ask the right question to get her to that point. I was just like, we can do a remote closing. We can do all this stuff was set up. And she's like, no, no, no. And I still think about that because had I known that was the reason, she didn't have to lie to me about COVID. You know what I mean?
Right.
Had I said, what is it that is so important that you close a different day? I would have gotten to her why,
Yep.
and I would have prevented her being mad. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It would have prevented a lot of, I think, well, you know what, I definitely understand that. We can try to push this closing date based on that. You know, it's like a day or two, or maybe a week. It was like right at the height of COVID, right?
Yeah.
And so we could have alleviated, like it was like a week off where she had the stepkids, you know. I'm like, let's see. You know, if we could have had the conversation, it could have headed that off a lot better. But I think if people are hesitant or people are starting to put up a fight, you have to get to why it is. And sometimes it has nothing to do with the house.
Yep.
You know, and sometimes it, you know, maybe they are scared they're not going to have the money, or maybe they're scared that they're not going to be able to afford it. You know, like all these things. Well, you know, you have to take them back to how they got approved or what it is. You know, if you can just narrow in on exactly what it is, because sometimes most of the time I feel like people, what they tell you about why they want to cancel or why they're freaking out has nothing to do with the house.
You're right about that 100%. And I think if you can't get to the bottom of that, you're not asking the right questions. It's really important to just have open, honest conversation. I have been in a couple situations like that where they've wanted to cancel, and I would say, listen, okay, I have sold a lot of homes. I work with all sorts of buyers, and I know that there's something else going on here. I'm on your side. You have to remember, I'm here to advocate for you. I'm representing your best interest. Tell me what the real issue is and we'll work through it.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, even if it means this is not the house for you,
Yeah.
tell me what it is. But I rarely have to get to that point because
Exactly.
we're having those conversations before we get to the point
Mhm.
of writing an offer. And it always comes back to the fact that if you are helping the buyer make an informed decision, you are focusing on the relationship, not putting too much focus on the sale and the pressure of the sale, building trust with that person and diving deep into their why, it will lead not only to writing an offer, but it's going to be an offer that does make it to closing. And more often than not, once you've identified the right property for the person, their timeline is irrelevant.
Mhm.
They're ready to move if you're truly working on their behalf.
Yeah.
My home that I'm currently in now, my agent at the time, I said, we are not moving till summer. I'm not taking my kids out of school. I'm not going through the process of having to re-register them. There's too much stuff involved in getting my house ready and everything else. And she said, exact same thing. Okay, well, you told me you're busting at the seams. What happens if I find you the perfect house at the right price? And I said, well, it would have to be exactly that, the right house at the right price. And I don't know, we'll take it from there. I put my house on the market months ahead of time of when I planned. She found me the perfect new construction home in the price point we needed at that time. And it moved like 4 months earlier than we planned to. And I have worked with so many clients that have moved up their timeline 3 months, 6 months, even a year, because it was so much about needing to meet their need of the right home that when you show them that's a possibility and that you're the person who's going to navigate them through the whole process, that they can trust you to really take care of them through that. If they're truly wanting to move, they're going to be ready to move.
Yeah.
So
100%.
focus on the client. At the end of all of this, that's what it's about. Building the relationship with the client, doing what's in their best interest, not just focusing on the sale. We don't need to pressure people into buying homes. We are too good at our jobs.
Mhm.
And when we take care of the client, remember, like Karin has talked about, your whole business is built on referrals. You've worked a ton of Zillow leads throughout your career. I'm sure you've got lots of referrals at the same time, but every one of those, regardless of where that lead source came from, is a client you've taken care of, you put their needs first, and that ultimately led to more referrals, and you built a dynamite business because of it. So
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really hard though in the beginning. It's really hard not to have that commission breath
yes,
because like I'm broke.
yeah.
So
Please buy this house.
but they can feel that.
Yeah,
They can 100% feel that.
they can definitely feel that. You cannot go in desperate. You want to be able to get to a point of your career where you can turn away bad business,
Mhm.
right? We just had this conversation about your time yesterday with
Yeah.
this difficult situation she's had, and a buyer who wants to go in like $250,000 under asking price on a property, 350. And I just said, absolutely not. Like you can coach them, but you have to remember, that you can turn away bad business as well. Keep yourself in a really good mindset, stay focused on what matters and be doing the work, and it will always work out. So
100%.
thank you so much for joining today. I
Thank you
appreciate
for
it.
having me.
You're an amazing agent. If people have questions about kind of coaching clients, we're going to be doing a lot more panel style training as we go forward. I want the agents on the team who are crushing it in real estate to really have an opportunity to share what they are doing to develop those relationships with clients, the tips and tricks and secrets that they have and how they're communicating with people to bring them forward and get their clients to make an offer. And you are certainly one of those agents. So I know we will be having lots more conversations in the future. Okay. Thanks so much for joining everybody today. And
Thank you, both of you. Very helpful.
Okay. Bye, Chris. Thank you. Bye, Gavin. Bye, Trevor. Have a good day.
Have a great day.